Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel meeting. Declare the meeting open at 9:33. So acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia. They respect elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. Meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. My name is Clayton Hyam. I'm the presiding member for today's meeting, and with me I have Eugene Koltaz, the deputy presiding member, and online Nima Premji, the specialist member, and from the City of Swan, Councillor Rod Henderson and Councillor Jennifer Catalano. There are no apologies and no members listed as being on leave of absence. Minutes from previous DAP meetings are available on the website. Moving to the City of Swan, well, City of Swan item, but both City of Swan items. I'm going to seek a declaration of due consideration. Have members, or could you indicate that you've fully informed and considered all the documentation before you? Good, thank you very much. Disclosures of interest. There is one from Councillor Rod Henderson in relation to the Standard Council interest, and yes, that's approved to be able to continue and adjudicate on this matter, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Catalano, do you have the same declaration to make?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And
both items have been discussed at council meetings.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. I'm happy with that and happy for you to continue to discuss and vote on this matter. Moving then to the first development item, item 3.1. This is the Bennett Street, Caversham proposed place of worship. We have some presenters, and can I remind presenters that you have 3 minutes, that we have, all members have seen the material that you have presented, so I would encourage you to stick to the points that you want us to have due regard to. So the first presenter is Rebecca Chamberlain. Rebecca's online, so Rebecca, over to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, can't see you.
Okay. I don't know why it's not coming up, sorry.
It's all right.
It's okay, I'll just continue.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to speak. I stand before you not in opposition of any faith or cultural expression, but in defence of sound planning principles and adherence to our own state policies, principles which form the backbone of responsible development in our community. The proposed place of worship is in clear conflict with the state planning policy, particularly the poultry farm buffer policy. This policy exists to protect future land use from emissions and other impacts associated with poultry operations. This site sits well within the mandated 500-metre buffer zone, in fact, not even 110 metres from it. It was presented at the City of Swan Council that the nearby poultry farm is non-operational. That is unequivocally false. The farm remains active, and disregarding this fact undermines the legitimacy of the entire planning process. Furthermore, misleading assertions were made suggesting that surrounding properties are not sufficiently rural. I respectfully challenge that, as the proposed development is bordered by a river, a vineyard, a market garden and a bird farm, clear evidence of ongoing and diverse rural activity. Under Local Planning Scheme number 17, the objectives of general rural zoning are not satisfied by this proposal. If approved, it would set a dangerous precedent for rural land use across this region, which obviously impacts Swan Valley. Secondly, our property directly abuts land protected under the Swan Valley Planning Act, which safeguards key local tourism assets. This region is one of Perth's most visited destinations for its natural beauty and rural charm. A development of this scale and nature stands to disrupt not only the visual and environmental character of the area, but also its economic function as a tourism drawcard, something explicitly noted in planning policy as an incompatible land use. Finally, I urge the Council to consider the cumulative impact on local infrastructure and community cohesion and safety, as accidents are already occurring in this site as it sits in a 70-kilometre zone. This area is under strain from previous JDAP approvals, namely the mosque approved by JDAP less than 100 metres away. That decision continues to present daily challenges for residents, the council and the wider community alike. Adding a second place of worship within 100 metres without meaningful infrastructure upgrades is a recipe for long-term planning failure, especially when you consider additional traffic flow from your intended Lord Street extension. The proposed development is not compatible with state or local planning objectives. It does not meet rural zoning requirements. It violates critical buffer protections, and it puts local tourism and infrastructure at risk. I respectfully ask this council to reject the proposal on clear demonstrable planning grounds rather than erroneous supposition and corrupted application channels. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Panel members, are there questions of Rebecca? No? Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to John Burgess. And are you doing a joint one presentation? All right, carry on then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and panel members. I'm John Burgess from Burgess Design Group, and I'm here today with Fakir, who's the church youth leaders. And I'm speaking in support of the officer's recommendation to grant conditional approval for the application. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for confirming that the PowerPoint's taken as read. I think that makes things a lot easier. We provided that really to give a little bit of clarity around the council's consideration of the proposal, the various cultural elements associated with that as well, and to provide you some context around some of the design changes. I'd also like to specifically acknowledge and thank their collaboration with the city's staff. And I think one of the key elements of that's with Mr. Phil Russell and Laura O'Shea, it was around the scale of the project. We started with a very aspirational number of 300 parishioners, and we've scaled that down to 200. Currently there's 80, and so that's already at 200 is already a very aspirational number, but we wanted to plan for the future rather than just catering for the current congregation numbers. So I think that was really important. And that also set a reduction in building volume and size and scale, as well as parking. And so it was very tight across the site previously. And I think where we've got to, it's a really good outcome that fits the site really, really well. The officer's report is very comprehensive, so we thank the officers for that. It deals with all of the relevant planning considerations. And I think what I'd like to do very quickly is really just want to talk about some of the very key cultural elements. The site itself is ideally suited for this use with its east-west orientation. So culturally for the church, the pastor enters from the east and the congregation enters from the west. And you would have seen from the design that the main entry to the church and the main entry to the church hall are from that western end, and that is where it abuts the existing recreational areas at the rear of the site as well, the Bennett Brook. So that's a great area for the congregation to merge and mingle and enter and exit from the church and the church hall without crossing the car parking. So the actual site itself is ideally suited for this type of development. You will have noticed from the plans also that even the bays, the universal access bays, are located right at the very back because it's close to this site rather than traditionally you'd locate them at the more traditional frontage to the site. The toilets was one of the other key elements that was discussed at council, and they look like they're tucked away a little bit, and that is on purpose. So they need to be as far away from the activities as they can be from a cultural perspective. So they're still included within the church hall building itself, but the doors are accessed from the outside of the building. So I just wanted to provide a bit of clarity around that because there has been some questions. There is no alcohol served on the site, which is another important consideration. You would have seen some comments that I made on the opening hours and the operational hours. And I think that's really just from the discussion at council. There was some confusion around that. So I just wanted to put those, make those quite clear. I think really probably the only area that in thinking about it, we probably need a bit of tinkering is that Monday to Friday morning service between 9 and 10. We haven't allowed the 15-minute arrival and departure time. All of the other operating hours we have. That one hour in the morning there, each day we haven't allowed for that. And then site context was really just to show you around the site. So obviously located on a busy road, but we are between two roundabouts. So not being able to cross the median actually works okay because there's roundabouts at each end of where we are, our street block. So that's important. And then to show you really what the site was like, it's got an existing dwelling on it. This was pre-purchase, so this was under the current owner or the previous owner. You can see the scale and context. So this is the sheds at the back of the property as it face onto Banara Road.
On that's 3 minutes. So if you want to,
Is it really okay? So it was really just to show you they've cleaned the site up. And look, we're really pleased. The DRP process was a good process, and that helped to shape and the scale and refine the project as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
thank you. We'll hold questions until we've heard from, is it Fakir?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Hello.
If you'd like to make your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak today. My name is Fakir, and I'm here on behalf of the congregation to explain to you why this church building is so important to us. Our current place of worship is located in an industrial area that has risen genuine concerns, especially when it comes to the safety of our children and our families. The traffic surrounding loading trucks and the general environment makes it difficult to feel secure, particularly on Sundays when many families are arriving with their young children. It is a setting that does not align with the kind of peace and protection that a place of worship should offer. On top of that, we're facing serious limitations with space. On Sunday, we run 4 Bible study sessions for our younger children, aged from 4 to 6, as well as age 7 to 10. And then we also have our younger teen section, which is from 11 to 15. And then we also have our young adults, aged from 16 plus. They're all run simultaneously, but due to the lack of proper facility, many of these sessions are held outside, with the people sitting directly on gravel and concrete surfaces. They're exposed to various weather conditions. For example, the harsh rains during the winter and then the harsh sun during the summer. And it's uncomfortable, distracting, and it makes it very hard for people to engage. These Bible sessions are not just formal classes. They're not formal classes or school programs. They simply run alongside the main Amharic language sermon, offering an English-speaking option, especially for the young people, so that they can understand the spiritual message in a language that is more familiar to them. It's a way to help them remain connected to the service and traditions of our church. There are also key practical challenges. We currently have no office space for our church as well, which makes it difficult to manage administrative and pastoral responsibilities of our church. Our choir has no secure space to store their uniforms or materials. These things may seem small, but they make a real difference in how we function every week. This new church is about restoring what the church should be: a safe, peaceful, and a functional space for worship, prayer, and spiritual growth. It's also about creating an environment that supports those who come regularly and deepen their faith, including the younger generation who are learning to understand and appreciate the traditions that have passed down to them from the apostles. We are not here to propose a facility for unrelated activity, nor to operate beyond what is expected of a place of worship. All we're asking is for a church, one that meets the real needs of our congregation and the facilities to properly serve our young people. It It's about leaving something lasting for the next generation, a place where where people can safely gather and practice their faith and stay connected. We are deeply grateful for your time, and we sincerely ask for your support in making this church a reality.
Thank you, Vicar.
We also have some photos to support the.
We've got another. They're the ones that were in the. They're different to the ones.
Yeah, they're different.
Well, probably not at this stage. Thanks. Yeah. Panel members, are there questions of either John or Vicar? Councillor Henderson.
Yes, thank you. John, this might be more suited to you. The hours of operation seem to be very restrictive. Could you perhaps outline how or why that's occurred, and does it in fact restrict your client's ability to perhaps be more flexible in their use?
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Yes, we've actually outlined the operational hours exactly as the church functions. So that's their plan, and it does allow for some growth. So having the Monday to Friday services morning and afternoon provides for some of the growth moving forward as well. Probably the only thing, as I highlighted in the PowerPoint, was the Friday morning services between 9 and 10. We haven't allowed the 15 minutes entry and exit time frame that was discussed at council when some of these open areas were discussed. The rest of the times that we've provided do include that movement time as well. So that's the only change. But yes, these hours are set around how the church intends to function.
So just to make that clear then, 8:30 to 10:30 would adequately cover the needs?
Yes, it would. Thank you.
Further
I
questions?
I have a question of the applicant. Knowing that there is a chicken farm nearby within a buffer zone, would you accept that they are there before you, and should there be any dust or pollution, odours or the like issues, that they have a right to continue their operations?
Yeah,
John?
Yes. Let me answer that as well. I thought that was covered really well in the officers' RAR. There hasn't been any complaints from in association with that chicken farm for 12 years, and the complaints prior to that were around dust, not odour, which I thought was interesting too. But yes, what Councillor Henderson is saying is that you're accepting that that is there already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, so thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted that to be clear. Thank you, Chairman.
Further, Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. Okay, for the planner, I noticed that, well, I don't know them, on one of the maps there, it shows that there's 8 mature trees are going to be removed from the site. I just wondered how you might explain that works in with condition 17, which states that the existing trees have to be retained.
So predominantly the site is cleared, mostly cleared. There are some trees that are located along the northern boundary interface that are actually pressing against the fence. So we've recommended some pruning of those trees and a little bit of a tidy up. But there's actually going to be a lot of landscape works and a lot of new vegetation proposed as part of this. I think that's probably one of the main elements to have come out of the DRP discussions and negotiations was the significance of the landscaping plan and the area to be developed to the west of the buildings. And that will interface with the brook area as well, which is Parks and Recreation Reserve. So I think, probably you can see from the photos in the PowerPoint, the site is predominantly cleared. There's a little bit of tidying up. There's some pampas grass and some other non-natives at the back that need to be tidied up as part of works associated with hopefully an approval. But apart from that, we'll aim to retain as much as we can of what's left.
Okay, but 8 mature trees are going to be removed.
So there's
with your map.
There's a couple of trees where the car parking is, yes, that will potentially be removed, but supplementary planting will be I don't know how many fold, 3, 4, 5-fold, but considerable as part of the landscaping work.
All right. With respect to the Aboriginal Heritage Act, I don't see any reference at all to any kind of Section 18 or any kind of consultation in this. And I mean, it's a well-known fact that Bennett Brook is a registered site. So, what have you done about that?
So the Act provides that when you actually do works in those areas, which there will be some tidying up works that will need to be undertaken, that you go through a Section 18 process and have collaboration with the relevant authorities. So that will be undertaken if approval is issued as part of those works. So you're correct, Councillor, in that where Bennett Brook is, that has significance, but the remainder of the site there's no further Aboriginal heritage significance on it.
No, but the floodway at the western end, it's not clear what you're planning to do or what the proponent is planning to do, because there's quite a lot of vegetation in there, and I see that the lot goes right down into the middle of the creek, and whilst you might own, the owner might own that lot into the middle of the creek, in fact, there's protection on that by virtue of the Aboriginal Heritage Act. So, there's kind of a bit of some tension there, and it's not recognised in the report.
Yes, Councillor, the Act has safeguards in place so that when you do works in those areas, they have to be monitored and managed and appropriate consultation. So that will occur with any development that happens in that section of the site.
Yeah, I was just surprised that you didn't put it in the report. Okay, and then I've got a question for the applicant. Thank you.
Yes.
So I see that you reduced the number of parishioners down from 300 to 200. I'm just wondering, are you expecting the community, the number of parishioners to grow into the future with, people having children and, new families coming into the area?
Yeah, of course. Yes, however, when we first started, it was very ambitious. So the 300 number was obviously a bit too high. So we've cut that down to 200. It's inevitable
How many parishioners do you have now?
Currently we have 80.
How many?
80.
80?
Yes.
80 parishioners now. And you're expecting your community to grow to 300 parishioners. Is that what you're saying?
No, to 200.
I know, but originally it was 300.
Yeah.
Yeah, but currently you have 80.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I just wanted to ask you about some of the uses that you're going to, be undertaking there.
Yeah.
So, how much of the kind of celebrations and devotions and things like that involves drumming and singing and chanting?
It's only like for 10 minutes.
Yeah, so it's usually when we're doing the hymns, it's usually about 10 minutes to 15 minutes max. So it's not long and it's not loud either.
It's not loud.
Is that every time the church is used?
Not every time. It's
So when would it be happening?
Sundays.
Sundays. What about during the weekdays?
During the weekdays, we just use our voice rather than using instruments. And usually during the weekdays, we don't have hymns being sung.
You don't sing during the weekdays, and you don't drum during the weekdays.
No.
But you drum and sing and chant on Sundays.
Yeah, on Sundays.
Oh, on Sundays, and that's it.
Yeah. If there's a special event, maybe sometimes on the Saturday, but for the majority of the year, it is on Sundays.
What about weddings?
It's unlikely. Like, it doesn't happen often, but yes, I guess that's all.
At weddings?
Yes.
And just wondering about your weddings. Do they go for a couple of days?
No, it will just be the one day.
The one day. Is that the whole day?
No, just in the morning for the service, and then after the service, they'll have their own function hall that they can go to. It will not be at the church.
Oh, okay. All right then. Thanks.
Thank you.
Further questions? Nima?
Yes, it's to the planner on DFES. According to the RA, and I know this is going to be a difficult one because I've got page 91, so I don't know what's going to be on your page, but it's a recommendation compliance with acceptable solutions not demonstrated, modifications are required. The DFES identified two elements, the location and the siting and design, that they found was at that time not compliant. Have you addressed that?
Yes, so in the PowerPoint presentation, there's a couple of photos that show the neighbouring property that we were asked to provide to the city. So the city's planners had raised some of the DFES comments with us, and there was clarification that was required over what the vegetation condition was on neighbouring property to ensure that we met the DFES requirements. And so we provided those images to show that most of it is just really kind of cleared and parking areas on that adjacent property, because when you look at the aerial photo, the canopy, because there's quite a few trees, there's actually quite a lot of canopy cover, and there was some confusion around what the classification of vegetation would be, and then hence what the impact would be on the bushfire management plan. So that work was done subsequently with the city's planners.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
John, I've got a question about those hours, and does that include the use of the hall?
Yes, it does. Yes.
So if it's a wedding, and the service would be in the church, and they'd move to the hall.
Then the reception is off-site.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So like after the service, they would go to a different hall. So they would have to hire their own hall off.
Why would you not use the hall that's there?
Most like them do.
Give them the medal, but after check.
No.
We don't use the way the hall for the way.
No, it's only solely for our church services only after the wedding, and the church hall, after they did their engagement or wedding ceremony, they go to their function.
Okay.
We just need bigger spaces.
That's what there was quite a discussion at the
Yeah.
council because of confusion around that, because it's very different to what we're used to as well. But the receptions are all held off-site, and so that's completely alcohol-free on the site.
Yeah.
But if they have a reception on-site at another location, they can serve alcohol and things if they want to.
Yeah, I suppose I'm just picking up, I think, on Councillor Henderson's thoughts that it seems very limited use for such a sizable building and facility.
And it has been put together with how the church functions.
Okay. All right, thank you. Further questions? No. Okay, thanks to the presenters. We'll move now to...
I have a question of staff, if I may.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Councillor. I meant to move to the staff. I beg your pardon.
No problem. Thank you. Could staff verify the zoning of the land, please? I saw some indications on the detail in the RA, but I just want a clarification.
General rural.
I thought I saw an overlay that indicated light brown, which was deferred urban.
Under the Metropolitan Region Scheme, that's correct. That's the Metropolitan Region Scheme zoning. The local planning scheme zoning is general rural.
Yeah, I just wanted that clarified. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions of the officers, Jean?
Yes. Is the land covered by the Swan Valley Planning Act?
No.
Because there was a submission stating that it was. In fact, it's not. Thank you.
No, it's the Swan Valley Planning Act is on the other side of the road.
Thank you.
That is the western boundary of the Swan Valley Planning Act area.
Okay, and another question. Mention was made of problems with the mosque across the road. Do you recall the number of parishioners at that site, Mr. Russell?
I do indeed, and just for the record, it was erroneously stated, as I'm sure the panel will appreciate, it was never approved by the JDAP. The approval of the mosque predated the Development Assessment Panel regulations. It was approved jointly by the West Australian Planning Commission pursuant to the Metropolitan Region Scheme and the City of Swan through the reconsideration process in the State Administrative Tribunal. The mosque in that process was capped with a patronage of 300 persons. The mosque, as it stands at the moment, is well understood by the city to be in breach of the conditions of its approval in terms of the numbers of patrons, and we are dealing with that as a compliance matter.
That was my next question, okay. And the poultry farm buffer, whilst there are generic buffers to sensitive land uses, you're satisfied that the property, I think it was 100 and something metres, is that correct?
Yes, just for some clarity, Mr. Chairman, there is no buffer. It is often erroneously stated where it is confused the statement of buffers. Buffers are statutory impositions and schemes. There is no buffer here, and in point of fact, as I've said many times before, there are no buffers within the City of Swan in its local planning scheme. What we're referring to, as I'm sure the panel appreciates, is as you've correctly termed, the generic guidance separation distances contained in the EPA document that's pertinent to the state planning policy. And in that instance, for this scale of poultry farm, the buffer is nominally 300 metres. About, as the report states, something like 110 or 150 metres distant from the poultry farm to the north. But as the report says, over the last decade, we have had absolutely zero submissions of complaint against any aspect of the operation of the poultry farm. And in point of fact, the very last, as has been noted, I think, by the applicant, the very last complaint that had been received was in relation to dust. So we have no extant record of any complaints from anyone at any point in time over the last couple of decades in relation to odour. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily correlate to say that there is no odour occurring. But what we can say is that it is not occurring at a level, if it is occurring, that is causing any complaints from persons that are in the vicinity of that poultry farm. So on taking that into account, noting that we have actually recommended the imposition of a condition with respect to mechanical ventilation to ensure that for the brief periods of time throughout the course of an ordinary week that the facility is in use, and most particularly its maximum period of usage on Sundays, the period in which parishioners are inside, that there is mitigation against any potential odour being generated by means of mechanical ventilation within the building. So the confluence of that aspect and the fact that this poultry farm does not appear to have a record of generating odours at any level that cause complaints, we're comfortable enough to recommend support.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further questions of the officers? Okay, thanks, Phil and staff there. We'll move on to the item now. There was no council recommendation, so we'll go straight to the officers' recommendation for approval with conditions. I'm seeking a mover and a seconder. Is there a mover for that? I'll move. Councillor Henderson. And I'll second it. Yes, Cortez, thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman. In respect of moving the item, I would also like to see an amendment to the Friday operating hours from 9 till 10, from 8 to change to 8:30 to 10:30 a.m.
Just Henderson, before you go on, I'll just see if the seconder supports that change, and that becomes the substantive motion.
I support that, yes.
Yes, okay, so that's now the substantive motion you're speaking to.
Yes, thank you. I thought we'd get that out of the way earlier. I do believe that there's been a conflict with a nearby facility, and certainly that has influenced many of the applicants with their submissions in respect of the potential impact of the numbers of people visiting the place of worship. From what I can see, this will be adequately dealt with the parking on site and the numbers are available. Clearly, if the numbers build to a point where more parking is needed, the applicant is going to have to deal with that, because if they flood out onto the road and cause issues, that will be addressed. I do believe the overall design is a good one. The amount of work that's been put into getting to this stage is of a high quality, and there are little things about it that I find rather unusual, like it's not inhabited, but we have to be above 6.53 metres AHD, and I don't quite understand that, but in any case, it might be a technical matter. But otherwise, with the land being deferred urban and urban around it, I see no reason why we could refuse this. Certainly the parishioners have every right to have a place, and in my view, they've chosen a good place to operate. And certainly they do need to be cognizant of the potential impacts that could be placed on the Bennett Brook, something that I've been passionate about over many years, and certainly I believe that they're going to take that into account. Otherwise, Chairman, I'm more than happy to hear debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Jean.
Yes, look, the proposal complies with the requirements of a local planning scheme, zone general rural, and a place of worship is permitted in that zone. Under the Metropolitan Region scheme, it's zoned urban deferred, and part of it is Parks and Recreation Reserve, which ultimately will be taken over by the WA Planning Commission, I would imagine. The objectives of the general rural zone don't apply due to the current land uses that are existing in the area. The urban deferred zoning under the region scheme clearly indicates that this area is to be urbanised in the future, not kept as general rural. And I think a number of the landowners in that area have on many occasions approached council to try and get the zoning under the local planning scheme to development or residential of some sort. The application was considered at length by the design review panel of council, and they supported it. The building height is commensurate to a two-storey building. Setbacks are consistent with other buildings in the locality to their boundaries, and the design review process resulted in setbacks being increased to the northern and southern neighbours. The bushfire management, as mentioned by the presenters, complies with the bushfire attack levels, and during the building design and approvals process, they will incorporate construction measures and materials to achieve the BAL ratings. In regard to traffic and access and parking, they were assessed in detail, and the parking guidelines of the WA Planning Commission support the thresholds that for significant impacts on streets that are fronting the proposed development, and they will achieve the necessary parking that's required on site. In regard to noise impacts, they've been assessed by an acoustic consultant, and the revised setbacks and reduced number of worshippers provided a guideline for the noises that that are going to emanate to be reduced to acceptable levels for neighbours, and acoustic fencing is going to be provided. The environmental impacts in regard to the site and the adjacent Parks and Recreation Reserve, abutting the reserve, the low impact recreation facilities for play spaces for the children and younger people on site will be a buffer to the Parks and Recreation Reserve. And the poultry farm impact, which is something that's been raised before, the council staff have just indicated that there have been no discernible or significant complaints for many, many years. As a result, I'm supporting the application and look forward to seeing a development that suits the requirements of the parishioners.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Catalano.
Can I propose an amendment?
Yes.
Inserting a condition, and the condition being prior to any works being undertaken, the applicant owner is to refer the development proposal to the State Government Department responsible for Aboriginal Heritage Act to ensure compliance with the Act and to consult with the Noongar custodians to the site.
Councillor Catalano, there is a slight difficulty in that you're introducing an act which has got nothing to do with the planning requirements. Can I suggest that might be better placed as an advice note? So
yes, please, you can put it in. Yes, that's right. That'll be okay with me.
No advice notes. I know Mr.
Yes, thank you.
Doesn't like advice notes, but I think it's probably better as an advice note that they be aware of the requirements under the Aboriginal Heritage Act.
Yes, I think so.
So perhaps some wording around that.
Okay. Prior to any works being undertaken.
As an advice note, I think it's just advice that they will need to undertake the requirements of the Aboriginal Heritage Act.
Okay, well, do you want to write it and then read it out to me?
The applicant note requirements, or note the requirement to meet, or the note the obligation to meet the requirements of Section 18.
Well, we could just, yeah, well, yes. The main thing is that they just, find out what they've got to do under the Aboriginal Heritage Act. I don't know if it's a Section 18 or not.
Mr. Chairman, they may not need to do anything under the Aboriginal Heritage Act, but perhaps if they...
Yeah, it may not be a Section 18 because that's if they're going to...
Any obligations.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. That's better.
Okay, I'm seeking a second.
And there was another aspect to that I wanted to introduce, which was...
I'll just get a seconder for...
Sorry,
that.
no, I wanted to add another extra thing to that guidance note, if you don't mind.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, which was, and to consult with the Noongar custodians of the site.
Should it be required?
The Noongar
custodians of the site.
Can I add that, should that be required?
Yes, put that in. Yes, that'll be fine.
That be required. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to seek a seconder for that advice note. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second it if...
Thank you. So, Councillor Catalano, do you want to speak to that amendment?
Yes, I do. I mean, only because it has been, there's absolutely no mention of any kind of Aboriginal heritage aspects in this report. And I mean, the Bennett Brook is a very well-known site. all of us, all West Australians have a responsibility, whether we're, new to the country or not. We have a responsibility to basically, look after and preserve and protect Aboriginal heritage in Western Australia, and that is for the future, generations of not only just Aboriginal people but non-Aboriginal people as well. I mean, it's part of our history. So I think it's really important. And the other thing about it is, unfortunately, this hasn't always happened. And I have experienced. I mean, there's been a recent development just down a little bit further down a tributary of the Bennett Brook, which was actually for a temple. And in fact, a lot of damage was done to this tributary of the Bennett Brook. And it hasn't been, it can't be fixed, in fact. And there's been not only the damage to the site, but there's been environmental damage, but then the two of them go together. And whilst, that site may not have been registered, it was actually part of the overall Bennett Brook. So it's just that, it's an incredibly sensitive area. And I think we can't wait until the damage is done to then step in and say, oh, hang on a minute, you've made a mistake. I think we should make everyone clear to everyone from the outset that this is sensitive. It is actually registered under a statutory act of the West Australian Government, and that we all have a responsibility to act within the parameters of that act and do the right thing. And then we don't have to have any complaints or have to deal with any damage. And everybody knows where they stand, and that the consultation is done with the appropriate, with Noongar people, so that we get the right kind of, if there's going to be any disturbance in the creek or in that floodway area or in the protected area under the Act, that the kind of revegetation or the works to remediate that are all done in accordance with what the informants to the site recommend. So that's why I think it's really important to have this in this as a guidance note, just so that it's very clear. And I think it assists the proponent, actually. New to the country, maybe they're not really completely aware of the obligations.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cotters?
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add. Further speakers on the amendment? No. All right. Oh, sorry, Nima. Beg your pardon.
Just very quickly, I wanted to just say that I concur with everything that Councillor Rod Anderson has said, and the Deputy Presiding Member. And I just like to congratulate the Ethiopian community and also the city officers for working together to address the concerns, to make sure that, to ensure that this particular development did meet the requirements under the local planning scheme, and address the concerns that were submitted.
Nima, this is on the amendment proposed by Councillor Catalano.
Oh, with Councillor Catalano, yes, I do agree with that.
Right. Okay.
I definitely do agree that we need to ensure that those sort of heritage concerns are addressed.
Thank you. Yes, I support it too. So no further speakers. I'll put the amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Catalano, the floor is still with you in terms of the substantive motion.
I won't be supporting it.
Okay.
And I'm quite happy to speak to it for a few minutes.
Well, it's your time now to speak.
Great, thank you. Yes, I mean, we have, the city of Swan. This is difficult because we've got two instances. We've got the mosque that we've already heard is not complying with the number of people that are using the mosque. It's exceeded its 300 people limit. That's creating problems for the city. They've got to go down there and try and get them to comply, and it's creating congestion in terms of getting in and out of the roundabout and using the whole area for transport and car users, and it's that's a fact that's happening. Then we've got over at this site that I was talking about, this temple over on the Bennett Brook tributary in Bennett Springs on Marshall Road. We've got endless complaints about drumming and noisy drumming affecting neighbours. And in fact, those neighbours are actually on the other side of the tributary. Now, what we've got here is it's because the development is located so close to existing residential housing. So, that's why that's why religious establishments in the past had a large area, and the noise could be kept down, and the congestion and all the other issues were contained within the site. But in this instance, neighbours are right up against this development, so it's unfair for everybody, I think, to approve it. And I don't think that realistically or practically any of the measures to contain the use, whether by reducing the number of people that access the site, or keeping the noise levels down, or reducing the amount of time that they're allowed to use the site, is actually fair to the community, and I don't think it's fair to the people who live next door. So it's probably the answer to all of this is probably find a site that actually makes the use, the religious use, really make it so that people are freely able to practice their devotional pursuits on that site without having to get into any kind of conflict with existing residential landowners. And that's the answer, I think. So agreeing to this now is not the answer, and that's why I won't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nima, I know you spoke before on the amendment. Did you want to speak on that substantive motion?
No, thanks.
Okay. Look, I disagree with Councillor Catalano. In the past, my experience is that all the local churches were quite small and within residential areas. So it's not unusual to have churches cheek by jowl with residential uses. And it's also not unusual to have conditions on lots of uses that restrict the time, the noise levels. I mean, childcare centres is a great example. So those sorts of conditions aren't unusual. I acknowledge that on occasions, perhaps like the mosque, it's out of control a bit, and it needs the city to take appropriate action. And hopefully, though, that even the mosque and the people before us today understand those issues and will comply. That is the general rule. It's a discretionary use. It does require us to exercise our discretion. But I think I'm satisfied with the officer's report and the way they've presented it as a use within that rural zone. From a design point of view, it's been through a rigorous process with the design review panel, and I think it's a great outcome for the church. And I note the concerns of the community about traffic and traffic noise and those sorts of things. Look, these issues are there already. This is not going to add much to that. It might add a little bit, but I think those traffic impacts are there, and the road network is capable of taking that traffic anyway. So noting the level of compliance with the scheme and the policies, and given the conditions, I'm prepared to support this proposal. Councillor Henderson, back to you.
Thank you, Chairman. many of the points raised in opposition to this have been dealt with by the chair, and I support what you've said in that regard. I just want to expand a little bit on the traffic issue. We have traffic issues everywhere. There's times when there are peak times when traffic is heavy. There are short delays. That's a fact of life in the city, and it's a reality. The percentage increase from this application is small, and that's simply going to be a small impact on any traffic issues which are already there. In regard to noise, I must say that I struggle to accept the argument put that noise is going to be a significant issue. Yes, chanting and playing drums and the like will increase the noise levels of the area. The fact of the matter is that every one of us have to comply with state laws in respect of emissions, noise emissions, and if those are exceeded, then a complaint can be dealt with to minimise or deal with it. The overall issues around churches having large areas around them. I can think of lots of churches. A lovely little church in James Street in Guildford, next to the town hall, the Guildford Hall, should I say? Not just a couple of houses down. But in any case, lovely little spot, smack in suburbia. They sing hymns at the church. Well, some people might not like listening to hymns and might want to complain about the noise on a Sunday morning. Well, that's what you get at churches, and I think that's a fact of our lives that we live. Rather than go through the other issues, I think we've dealt enough with the matters. More than happy to support and look forward to getting on and letting everyone enjoy their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I'll now put the motion as it was changed with the hours. So, in favour? Against? That's carried 4-1. Thank you very much, and thank you to the presenters. We'll move on to the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and panel members. Thank you.
We'll just wait while the next lot of presenters come in to the room.
You sit here.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to item 3.2. This is the new shop building, Market Fresh IGA, and modifications to the Barker store and warehouse building in Swan Street, Guildford. Got a number of presenters, and I asked the presenters to stick to their 3-minute limitation, except I have agreed with the applicants. They've got 3 presenters, and I've agreed to a combined 15 minutes for the applicants at their request. Lindsay, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Thank you to the presiding member and members of the panel for the opportunity to present this morning. My name is Lindsay Baxter and I've been a resident of Guildford for 24 years. However, my association with Guildford goes back much, much further than that, to the 1960s. Hard to believe, I know, given that I don't look that old. What I would like to impart to the panel is that in seeing Guildford go through many changes over time, I'm coming from lived experience. The report for consideration is, of course, the technical report prepared by officers from the City of Swan, which supported the application, but also a formal recommendation for refusal, which stemmed from debate by the elected council, which voted by a majority 10-3, advancing 3 reasons for refusal and a note explaining why it does not comply with reason C. My own submission to the City of Swan did not object to the use of the site for a shop, but it did raise the obvious issues of traffic and parking and the appearance of the new building. I'm going to cut to the chase to the appearance of the building, as that's the matter most important to me as a Guildford resident and someone who takes the heritage of the area seriously. As much as I think the traffic and parking matters will cause mayhem in Guildford if this use is approved, if we have to live with this development, can we not have a 1970s brown brick building in this precinct or anywhere else in Guildford for that matter? Brown buildings like platform shoes and flares belong firmly back in the 1970s. There have been in excess of 25 reports done on Guildford since the dawn of time, beginning with Professor Gordon Stevenson's reference to Guildford in his plan for the metropolitan region, to others dealing with history, conservation, traffic, parking, design and development. And you know what? The authorities in charge of decision-making still can't get it right. And Guildford, a place of state significance, suffers the consequences of inappropriate development. The current Guildford-Mandoon Heritage Area local planning policy is warm and fuzzy and really has a bet both ways with the interpretation of acceptable and performance criteria. It can be and is manipulated, and it is very open to interpretation. This section of Swan Street has a range of red brick, red orange brick and rendered buildings and walls. If this development assessment panel is inclined to approve the application for the IGA shop, please don't allow the colour of the building to be brown or any variation of brown with grey mortar. It needs to be red brick, red orange brick or cream or white rendered. Please have the fortitude to disagree with the Heritage Council, the Design Review Panel and the City of Swan officers in that regard. If I can only make one point on the issue of traffic and parking, it is this. The RAR on page 30 says that the delays in the traffic situation are, and I quote, not considered to be intolerable, and that this can be offset against the benefits that the proposed retail offering will bring to the Guildford community. On that point, make no mistake about it. This IGA is merely in Guildford, not for Guildford. The proposed IGA supermarket is focused on attracting patronage from the 16,000 vehicles per day which use Meadow Street and West Swan Road, not the tiny population of Guildford, which already has a much wider choice of shopping in Midland and Bassendean. Having regard to my submission and my deputation, I request that the Development Assessment Panel either adopt the recommendation in the RAR or give serious consideration to the alternative wording of Condition 3, should this matter be moved for an approval. I'm more than happy to take any questions from the panel.
Thank you, Lindsay. Questions for Lindsay? Lindsay, it was my understanding that the council make a decision.
That's not what I've seen. The recommendation is for refusal with 3 reasons, and that went forward into the RAR. They don't make a decision, obviously, they make a recommendation to the panel.
Yes, I don't.
Yeah.
My understanding is they didn't actually resolve that.
Oh, that's what's in the RAR, though.
Yes. Yeah. In terms of I suppose it's around the colour of the brick, but how would you suggest we ignore the Heritage Council expert opinions in the Design Review Panel?
Thank you for that question. In the Heritage Area Policy, I've got my glasses on, so I'm going to struggle to read it, but it does say, with respect to materials and colours, it talks about utilised colours typical of the contributory place. Now, the contributory place in this area is not only Barker's store, but the old jail on the other side of the road. So because it says utilise colours typical, that to me says the colours that were typical of the colonial period and the Federation period, which is what Guildford is all about. I know where the Heritage Council is coming from. It says that the new must be completely different to the old, and that's fine. And they could do this building in render and it would be completely different to Barker's store, which is what they're trying to differentiate it from. But picking up a colour of brown, which is really from the 1970s, and the examples in my submission showed a house in Helena Street, totally atypical of other Guildford development, and the building in Terrace Road, which has black ATSEC, some red in it, but is mostly brown to look at. So I don't think there's any problem with the Development Assessment Panel making its own decision on the colouring, provided what it goes for is something that does look different. And you can make it look different even if you use the same colours. I can give you an example of the Guildford Hotel. There is an absolutely new extension that was done to the Guildford Hotel, not the Vaudeville Theatre part, but the other part on Johnson Street. That building is actually rendered, but it looks like a modern section of building. It hasn't tried to replicate the Guildford Hotel, and that's how to do it. Quite frankly, I've had probably a bit of a change of position in terms of how buildings ought to look in a heritage area more recently. I used to think that having a bit of pastiche looked okay, and the stuff that's opposite the Rose and Crown looks okay. You look at that and you think it looks like Guildford. You know that you're driving into Guildford because that's what that development looks like. But when you look at heritage overseas, how they do it is they do it completely modern. So although it would be quite contrary to the area policy, if you did glass and steel on this building, then you've got a differentiation there. So I think the panel can make its own interpretation of the policy. It is only a policy, and I alluded to the fact that it is manipulated and is interpreted. So it's up to this panel, the 4 members that I can see here. I'm not quite sure whether Nima's online, but it's up to this panel to make that decision having regard to the policy.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. Further questions of Lindsay? Nima? No, sorry. Jean, sorry.
Yes, Lindsay, the amount of traffic that goes through this area, you said 18,000, whatever it is.
16,000 on Swan Road, yep.
You don't buy the argument that a small amount during the peaks doesn't significantly impact the traffic flow? We're only talking a couple of hundred in the peak hour.
Yeah, I actually don't think this development is going to increase the traffic, but it's certainly not relying on Guildford traffic. But what it will do, and thank you again for that question, because it leads me into another issue in relation to the access and parking. One of the conditions that the City of Swan officers have recommended is a keep clear zone, and I think it's on the east side of West Swan Road or Meadow Street as you come into Guildford. And that's to allow access, because the only access point will be to the current northern crossover. So you've got all that traffic that pours down West Swan Road into Guildford in the peak hour, plus the traffic that's coming from the city pouring through Guildford. If somebody's trying to access into the IGA and there's a keep clear zone, can you tell me that lazy Perth drivers take heed of a keep clear zone? They absolutely do not. They don't do it at the lights at the Guildford Hotel where there's crosses on the road to try and prevent traffic tipping into the intersection. So, Jean, I suppose it's not going to increase the traffic, but this development is designed to capture that traffic on West Swan Road.
In regard to the traffic, at the moment, the traffic that goes through there to the site goes to the liquor store.
Yep.
You don't see that they won't do shopping there as well. Maybe they'll reduce the amount of their traffic trips, and also there are people that reside in Guildford who would find this to be a convenient type of shopping area. I mean, at the moment they go 2, 4, 6, 8 kilometres away, according to some of the submissions. Do you think that that's a little bit far for local residents to have to travel for their convenience shopping? I can understand higher order shopping, they will, but
Yeah. Convenience shopping, it kind of depends. I mean, the applicant's own submission says that the average number of purchases are 4 to 6. So that means that somebody's nipping on their way home to buy a block of camembert, some crackers and a bottle of wine at the liquor store. They're not actually doing their main grocery shopping there. They are, you know, people from Guildford. My shopping trips are entrenched in Midland and Bassendean. That's where you do your bulk of your shopping. This type of boutique IGA is you just pop in and grab something, and that's fine. That's what they need to be honest about pitching it for. And that's exactly what the 16,000 or a portion of the 16,000 vehicles per day on West Swan Road will do. As for the liquor store, you tend to pop into the liquor store. You'd have to ask them about the frequency of their trips, but I tend to pop in there perhaps late in the afternoon when I am actually buying a bottle of wine for dinner or something like that. So I think the trip generation is probably a little bit different.
thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of Lindsay? No. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
We'll move to the applicants, Trent and Co. 10 minutes, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Presiding Member. So just to introduce my team firstly, and thank you for the combined presentation. We will be a bit more efficient if use the full 15 minutes. So to my right, I have Jacob Martin from WSP, our traffic engineer, Zach Evangelisti, our lead architect, and Philip Griffiths, our heritage architect. Also have Eddie Cutto, so one of the owners, and Cameron Hayes, our project manager behind me, as well as my colleague, Melanie Cox. So the vision here, members, is to develop a boutique IGA under the Market Fresh brand, whilst retaining the Copper Oak liquor store. The floor area of the IGA is 413 square metres, which is really on the small end of IGA shops. It has 6 aisles, 3 checkouts, a fruit and vegetable display. It's around 9 times smaller than a full-size Coles or Woolworths, and it is a local offering. It will sell fresh produce. It will sell ready-made meals, which people can pick up on their way home from work, and it'll have really quite a modest range of your sort of daily grocery needs. It will also showcase local produce. So we're on the doorstep of the Swan Valley, and there's a lot of relationships with suppliers and purveyors that are going to be leveraged there. The development is by 2 owners and their families, and it is an operator-led development, and the design specifically caters for their needs. So that was just a brief introduction, but for our presentation today, we have a recommendation of refusal from the council. I think potentially the lack of vote might have been on the item before us. I did understand we got a refusal recommendation from the council. But of course, the RAR is otherwise supportive, and the officers have recommended approval. So we're going to use that collective presentation to address the reasons for refusal the council has put forward, being the traffic, the parking, so the heritage or design response. And as I mentioned, you'll hear from Jacob and Zach shortly regarding the traffic and parking demand analysis, and the design approach from Zach as well. I'm just going to touch on the design, a little bit of the design and parking. And, firstly, I would just say we do appreciate the Guildford community are passionate about their design. We always knew it was going to be challenging to get an outcome that everyone in the community would agree with. The submissions are more in favour of the development than against. And as we just heard, some of the opposition has simply come down to the brick colour. So I just want to talk through that. The colour which we landed on is known as a Bowral Blend Bargo. This was a product of the design review process. So our early design concepts did have a more traditional red brick, and the design review advice was that there should be more of a contrast to distinguish the heritage from the contemporary building. So we, of course, adopted that recommendation. Just for everyone's certainty, and I don't know if that's clear on the camera, but that's the brick colour we're looking at. So It is a type of red brick. It's more brown on the spectrum than red potentially, but really that was the colour we landed on to create a suitable contrast between the lightish red brick of the heritage building and the contemporary building, of course. It's certainly not a chocolate brown. It's not a 1970s brown. It's I'd probably call that more red brick than brown brick, but I'll leave panel members to make their own judgment on that one. So our design team does feel that's the right approach for the development. We would also say if the DAP chose to condition a different brick colour, it's not something my client would be aggrieved by. As I mentioned, we did have a red brick in the earlier schemes prior to the DA lodgement. Yeah, it's not something we'd be aggrieved by if that were to change. More broadly on the design, we do think it's a fantastic outcome. There's been a strong focus on maintaining view lines to the 1850 heritage building and reflecting local heritage in a modern way. The independent design reviews have been overwhelmingly positive, and as you've heard, there's support from the Heritage Council as well as the city's design review. Just touching on parkings, on the parking front, we've assessed a technical shortfall of 23 bays. I think the RAR has assessed a 31 bay shortfall. Either way, it does need to be considered on performance grounds. I won't repeat the justification in the RAR, but I will note 3 considerations which we believe to be important. First is the parking demand assessment. So I cannot recall an application I've dealt with which has seen a more rigorous assessment of parking demand. There's been parking surveys, both of comparable stores and the location itself. There's been transaction data sourced. The operation of the existing liquor store has been reviewed in quite a lot of detail. And this has all been used to forecast the demand of the IGA or the collective development. So Jacob will discuss that in a little bit further detail, but really one of the simple facts I wanted to highlight, and you've already heard it today, people spend an average of 4 minutes in IGAs of this nature, and they purchase an average of 4 items or thereabouts. So it's very different to other uses in Guildford, restaurants, hotels, where people will park for hours. People are here for very short periods of time. Secondly, as I've noted in my presentation summary, the parking requirement of 8 bays per 100 is on the very high end for a shop. It's not commensurate with the demand of these types of local shops. We have a planning manual from the WAPC which puts forward minimum and maximum parking rates for centres of this nature. So for a local centre, this planning manual suggests a minimum of 1 bay per 50 square metres of floor space. And we have around double that requirement. It also suggests a maximum parking rate of 1 bay per 20 square metres, and we're only just short of that. And the city's requirement actually exceeds the maximum requirement that is put out in that planning manual. So I'm not suggesting the manual overrides the local planning scheme, but we think it can be given due consideration in exercising discretion on the matter. Third and final point, and perhaps most important in my eyes, is the impact that additional parking would have on the design. So 8 bays for every 100 square metres of floor space means you need 180 square metres of parking area for every 100 square metres of floor space. That's if you develop at-grade parking, of course. So that would mean to comply, 64% of the site would need to be dedicated to parking, and that would quite clearly have a negative impact on the design outcome we're trying to achieve. The Guildford Mandoon Heritage Policy also expressly notes that varying parking standards is acceptable when additional parking would impact on heritage outcomes. Finally, and just to finish my portion of the presentation, we know that Guildford is really crying out for this type of facility. There is nowhere in Guildford for local residents to buy basic groceries, and the proposal is filling that need. We know that from speaking to locals. That level of support is also reflected in the submissions. And the city also has a local commercial strategy that identifies the need for a local offering of this nature. The community benefit is a relevant consideration under clause 67(2) of the deemed provisions. So we think that can be taken into account. Finally, just some of the opposing submissions claim that this is the wrong location for this type of development, particularly some of the written submissions that the panel has received, and just wanted to offer a quick response to that. In that, what could be a better location than a corner site, which makes it easier for traffic flow, a site that is on the main commercial strip of Guildford. The original use of the site back in the late 1800s was actually a wholesaler and grocer, and it's a site that is zoned general commercial where the land use is permitted. So I just wanted to finish on that note, and I'll hand over to Jacob for traffic.
Thank you. So I'd just like to frame how we've prepared this traffic impact assessment. And I tend to do this more often in this way, which is to try and identify the reasonable worst case that we can predict for this particular location, this particular use, and then run a series of tests to make sure that it doesn't create undue impact on the surroundings. And we've done this in a number of different ways. Through some pretty conservative assumptions around generation and distribution to essentially maximize our potential impact, and then to test to see whether that impact is going to be a problem. There are a number of constraints in the local environment. There's the access into the site and potential queuing from that access back onto Meadow Street. There's the impact on the roundabout itself, which is already the convergence of a district distributor A and a local distributor carrying quite a lot of traffic. And there's, beyond all of that, potential impact of queuing from that roundabout back towards the level crossing. So essentially what we did through the assumptions that we built into this was to look at what would be the worst case that we could predict. And then for each of those, create a test to see whether we were going to have a problem. And in each of those cases, the resulting outcome was positive. There is some delays, there will always be some delays from adding additional traffic. But going back to Lindsay's comment before, we have assumed minimal pass-by trading. So new trips added to the network by assumption. We've assumed that essentially wherever possible, those trips will use the roundabout and maximizes our use of the roundabout, and so maximizes the potential impact. All of these create an outcome which shows some minimal impact, but well within the bounds of what the network can handle. Parking as well, we did an extensive piece of parking work to ensure that there was sufficient parking on site. And while we did find that there was potential some overspill, that overspill would occur very specifically at a Saturday evening peak and wouldn't have a demonstrable impact on the surrounding environment. So we tried to be extremely rigorous through this, knowing how sensitive the location is both to community and to council, and to make sure that we're not undercooking anything. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions that come from a traffic and parking perspective. And I will.
And Zach Evangelisti,
Thanks, presiding members, for the opportunity to speak. I'm just going to breeze through the front portion of this presentation because I know Trent has made a pretty good. Sorry. Trent's already given a fairly good introduction. You mind if I just stand up over there and do it? Oh, yeah, reaching. Trent's given a fairly accurate breakdown of the immediate context and introduction of the site. So just quickly, the more contemporary addition to the heritage building has actually been strongly influenced by the existing immediate buildings around this area, and that goes for the canopies and the striped, which I know has been brought up in some of the objections, as well as the very tall and extruded and arched major openings that generally face the main thoroughfare on these streets. So as a bit of context, the original siting of the buildings and the warehouses was actually a strong influence on where we sited the addition to this site. So prior to the demolition of the existing warehouses in 1965, Swan Street was actually interfaced by two of these large warehouses, which I suppose created a visual buffer from the goal, which is to the south of the site, to the heritage building. And so that existing footprint obviously helped dictate where the main street interface was going to be along that face on Swan Street. So you can see prior to that, the demolition of the warehouses, which has now been taken over by vehicle car parking as current. These are landgate images that kind of give you an understanding of where the existing warehouses are, then forming a public interface to the street. Obviously, in 1977, you can see those were demolished. With TBB, have done a site analysis, and these were kind of done to go over the pros and cons of each option. Currently, the vehicle parking at the front of the site along Swan Street do not provide any positive amenity, also lack public safety, and lacking of streetscape and appeal. So the idea was for us to relocate that vehicle car parking to the rear of the site so it didn't have any visual impact, and also to create a better visual relationship between the main thoroughfare, Swan Street, and the proposed building. These are some very quick diagrams to explain the siting of the project. Obviously, the potential expansion area as described with the two buildings that were originally there, hence why we came up with these forms. The extruded form, which was then cut back to create a visual connection to Stirling Square across the road. And this cutting back in the site, also reducing the land mass, but obviously creating a public opportunity and open space area, which is able to celebrate the heritage building amongst the site.
This is 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Carry on. I'll give you a couple more minutes.
Yeah. I'll zone through this. This is just diagrams to explain the visual connection, but I think I might just touch on the last thing, which is the bricks. So the bricks, as I understand, and Trent has already touched on, we did initially go to the DRP with a brick that was more in line with the colour and tone of the original Baker's store, but we're encouraged to obviously re-specify the brick to something that was darker. The Mandoon area policy mentions obviously to use a traditional building material, being brickwork. It also explicitly notes to create enough variation in there to distinguish between what is actually existing and what is new. So we have tried to adhere to that policy and obviously introduced a brown brick. I will admit the render in this being an architectural visual perspective, it appears darker in this render than it does in the image that Trent has provided. So I just wanted to be clear. The image on the left is actually from the Mandoon area policy, which seems to be present and portrays a brick that's very similar to what we have actually proposed. And then obviously in the middle, we've got the current brick that we are proposing, as well as the brick that is on the Baker store as current. This is all to do with hierarchy, and it's all feedback that we've received from the State Heritage Council with regards to parapet heights and scale to not overwhelm the existing heritage building. Obviously, we've adjusted the built form and scale to improve the and celebrate the existing heritage overlay on this site. I think that'll probably do.
Thanks. Yeah. All right, thanks, gentlemen. To questions from panel members.
I do have some questions. What type of brick did you originally have? Did you have a...
There was no particular name for it, but the same manufacturer actually manufactures a brick that is more blonde in its appearance, so it's much lighter, but it wasn't a bold enough contrast to the existing heritage building to be able to easily distinguish the two brick types. Hence why we've chosen something that was a bit darker.
And why the grey mortar? Could you not use cream mortar with this?
From an aesthetic background, it wouldn't have looked, I suppose, proper. We can obviously investigate a different mortar colour, but we're trying to make the mortar colour and the brick work or to suit one another, obviously.
And curved feature walls, there's been a comment made about them not being respectful enough to the fabric. Mr. Griffiths might be able to mention that, so being a heritage architect, perhaps.
Yes, well, look, the principle is to differentiate, and it's often been misinterpreted, and the difference can be subtle. And distinguishing in plan form, revealing the tower of the old Baker store, are compatible. so that the curving walls kind of blend into, draw your eye into the heritage building. So I think it's a pretty acceptable outcome.
And is there a sort of a red brick that, I mean, Trent, you mentioned that you're not adverse to adopting a slightly redder brick. I'm not talking about bright red or anything like that, but something that respects perhaps, I think my view is that when you drive through Guildford, it kind of looks orange tone, the brickwork.
Yes, they were underburnt bricks by modern standards, and they were fired in a wood fire, so they're burnt at a much lower temperature, which gives you that lighter colour. We burn by gas now, and we get very uniform colour, and you have to create the variation. It doesn't come naturally out of the firing method.
Probably to add to that, Jean, we don't have a specific colour to put on the table as an alternative. So we do think we landed on the best outcome, but our client wouldn't be opposed if the condition might be more examination of that.
To choose a colour, would we?
Effectively. there is a colour.
Would be a bit difficult at this juncture.
There is a colour and material schedule condition, which obviously would provide a bit more detail on that condition clearance, of course.
I suppose that would require you to agree with council staff, I suppose, at some time to get a more acceptable colour to those that object to the so-called brown that you've got. But the other question is your answer to the awnings, Mr. Griffiths. Objection to the awnings that were proposed with the striped awnings. Is that foreign to Guildford, or?
It's reinterpreting something. Like the awnings, traditional awnings are hard construction, and they're striped, which is very common. And it's kind of just drawing metaphorically on those awnings and giving them a modern interpretation.
Okay. I have some questions on parking.
Yes.
You note that the area, you say that there's a sufficient amount of parking. In the evenings, I've frequented Guildford to the various cafes and restaurants and that, and I have found it at times difficult to get parking. What restrictions will you have on the parking area to reserve that parking that's available for shoppers rather than people going to the restaurants?
So the recommendation from the officers at the City of Swan was to restrict them to 2-hour parking, which I think is more than reasonable. Customer only parking doesn't work anyway, so something with a reasonable time restriction I think does the job. They are on the other side of the boundary, and you're right, there's a significant amount of parking that is consumed by the local crowd all the way up the street. It doesn't tend to hit all the way up to West Swan Road, Meadow Street, although that does happen. And both ourselves and the city have gone out there to check to see what's availability looks like through that period. And there is a significant amount of available spaces along that Meadow Street corridor.
Thank you.
So next time you're there, I would recommend parking up there and walking the distance.
Yes, at Stirling Square.
Okay. Further questions? Nima.
Still to do with not parking and traffic and so forth. I'm very familiar with the place. I drive through every day. The residents that are across the entry points to the IGA on Meadow Street, I can't see any traffic assessment that's done in terms of, with the cars parking on that storage corridor before they make a right-hand turn, and you've got the other residents on the opposite side with their driveways, interfacing Meadow Street. Have you had a look at that to see how that can be managed? Because what's going to happen is if it doesn't work out, the residents are going to complain.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we did undertake a a series of tests around peak period movements into site. The worst queuing that we can see from any time period is during that evening peak, assuming that the majority of our movements come from the south. Weekday evenings, we're projecting a maximum of 2 cars waiting to turn. But that's a total of something like 60 cars an hour, 60 to 70 cars an hour. So there are long gaps between those vehicles. There's plenty of opportunity for turning, although I would admit that in that location now, turning right out of the laneway back towards the Meadow Street roundabout is already going to be difficult. This isn't going to make that worse, but that is a difficult time to turn just because of the sheer traffic volumes that go past.
Right. And just wanted to confirm with you if I got it right. The additional vehicles that you have put in your traffic assessment report, that is not into account the through traffic that may occur, because that is a major through road. I mean, it comes all the way up to, you know, Banara and West Swan Road roundabout, and that roundabout is also quite packed up, so it's all that traffic coming through. So would that be right?
So we've run the assessment with the full existing traffic volumes plus our additional traffic. But what we haven't done is we haven't discounted that traffic to account for people who are going down that road anyway. So the work that we've done is conservative, and the outcomes will be better than this when all of that is realised.
And when this was given to Main Roads concurred with your report and did not come back to you? Not that I saw any feedback, or very little feedback from Main Roads.
Main Roads were fine with the outcomes. They did, as identified by Lindsay previously, they did recommend a revised traffic flow. When I tested that, because we went through the process to test that, it made things worse. So we've retained the original proposal.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions of the presenters? No? Okay. Look, just before I move on to the officers, I just want to acknowledge that I was wrong in terms of there was a council resolution to refuse this, and I apologise to Lindsay for sending that curveball to her. It was the previous item that didn't get a resolution up. So moving to the officers, Phil and your team there, do you want to make any comments or just take questions?
Mr. Chairman, you have a comprehensive 37-page report in front of you, so I'll let that speak for itself.
Thank you. All right, questions of the officers? Yes, Nima.
Yeah, I just wanted to get some confirmation from the officers. There's been advice proposed by DPLH regarding heritage conditions imposed by Heritage Council of WA. Do you expect that to be addressed in condition 11, or would you want an advisory note? It's just a query, that's all, because of the advice that was received by them.
Bear with me a second, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Oh, sorry, Phil, you're checking it. Yep.
Yeah, just checking.
Yeah, condition 11 has been worded to encompass the advice of the DPLH, that's specifically the Heritage Council with respect to archaeological impact statement.
Okay, so that is expected in that particular report. Okay, thank you very much. That's all I just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Further questions? Phil, what are your thoughts on reviewing the colour of the brick? I know you've made comment in the report, but there's been quite a bit of discussion here about that.
I'll make plain, Mr. Chairman. I think ultimately you could say in this instance, do you throw the dog a bone? The proponents have said they're non-plussed around the colour. I also observe that they have actually probably to some extent done themselves a disservice in the graphical representation of the colour. Back in the day when we were dealing with Guildford, we used to have proponents bring in a live specimen or an inanimate specimen of the brick type so we can see the brick in reality. I think the proponents would have been well served to have done that in this instance to demonstrate that, because I can understand the community talking about the brown. I also accept the proposition totally that the important thing here is you have face brick, and the face brick echoes the other contributory places. There is even slight disparity between the brick colours of the other contributory places in tone. They are all reddish spectrum bricks, so I'm happy to support, and certainly hearing what I've heard, that the Balgo brick, whatever the type is described as, will be a lighter shade, and the representation shown by the proponent in preference to the graphical representation. I'm comfortable enough that it is close enough within the spectrum of the other contributory places, and I accept the proposition put forward by the design review panel to introduce a slight marked distinction between this new build and the brick of Barker's store. So I haven't recommended in the report that went to council and yourselves that the brick colours change for those reasons.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions of the officers? No, okay, thank you for the officers. We'll now move on to the recommendation. There is a recommendation for refusal with 3 reasons presented. Is there a mover for that? Because one of the things we will need to look at is the preamble to that to describe the application itself, or the number of the application. So I'm going to see if there's a mover, first of all, for that. Councillor Catalano, is there a seconder for that? No, okay, thank you. That lapses for want of a seconder. We'll move to the officer's recommendation for approval with a number of conditions. Is there a mover for that?
I'll move that.
Yes, Mr. Colters, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Nima, thank you very much. Ben.
Yes, look, this application has been through what I would consider a thorough review. The responsible authority report, the referrals to the Heritage Council, Department of Planning, Main Roads, etc. From the outset, it's clear that the proposed development conforms to the planning framework for the locality, in that it's a general commercial zone under Local Planning Scheme 17. A shop is a permitted use, and given the responsible authority report, it shows that the proposal complies with the objectives of the general commercial zone. The proposed development integrates to the existing liquor store in design form, in terms of not dominating the existing Barker's store and warehouse, but fits in and wraps around that particular element of the site. And it also highlights the Barker's store and warehouse. It retains and upgrades features on the Barker's store and warehouse, and also the proposal is to do some minor works in roof and drainage, downpipes, etc. to the particular building. The built form has been through a rigorous assessment through both the city's design review panel, the Heritage Council of WA, and both of them support the proposal in its form. And I think the fact that it has received strong support is something we as a panel have to take and give due regard to. The access to the site from a traffic point of view didn't draw the ire of Main Roads Department or Main Roads WA. The proponents have gone through and given it a detailed assessment, and also the city engaged an independent traffic consultant to do some surveys in the area. In terms of the access arrangements, I think it's been shown that whilst there will be some minor impact on existing traffic flows, the traffic flows in this area are very heavy, and they stem from the fact that the traffic flowing through here comes principally, I think, from the northern suburbs up in Ellenbrook and Caversham, etc., Dayton and so forth, that push traffic through to Great Eastern Highway and through areas like Redcliffe and so forth. So in terms of traffic numbers and volumes, it's supported as far as its impact. Parking, once again, has been assessed, and whilst I think that the proponents will have to manage the parking on site so that the after hours usage for restaurants and cafes, etc., don't occupy them. 2 hours, I think, is quite a long time to go to a restaurant and have a feed. You're usually kicked out after an hour these days. So I think that the numbers through the surveys that they undertook and the examples they gave for other IGA stores show that the numbers for parking are acceptable as well. The fact that the site has got a couple of roundabouts near it actually helps in terms of traffic flow and aids in the restriction of traffic flow to left in, right in, left out on Meadow Street and left out only onto Swan Street. So I think that that's helps traffic coming in and out of the site. The fact that there is no other facility like this in Guildford, which has got a number of people living there. I'm not sure the exact numbers of residents, but it'd have to be in the thousands. And I think that pushing people from a locality like that, country towns of that scale would have a small IGA, or even smaller resident populations would have an IGA for convenience shopping, but not only that, people shop full-time at IGA stores, not just for smaller items. I mean, you can go and get 1 or 2 items, but others will probably get 20 or 30 items. So it adds additional choice for Guildford residents that now travel to Bassendean and Midland and Horsham for their shopping. The size of the retail outlet is of a scale that does service a small residential population and will also assist passing traffic. I think the fact that Midland is at the junction of a lot of major roads, it's inevitable that people will stop and get things like bread and alcohol and so forth, their liquor journeys through that area. So co-location with the liquor store, I think, has benefits in that it will reduce the overall traffic in the locality because people will be sharing trips. So given that, the compliance with the objectives, the Heritage Council support and the Comprehensive Responsible Authority report, I am supporting the proposal.
Thank you. Nima. Second.
Thank you. I concur with all the comments made by my fellow Deputy Presiding Member, and would just like to add that I use that area just about every day. So overall, reading the paper, the report was very well written. The current heritage buildings will remain largely unimpaired by the proposed works and will have little or no negative impact. I know there has been a debate about the colour of the brick, but I think it has gone through a very rigorous process, both by the Heritage Council and the Design Review Panel, and so a colour has been proposed. But there is a condition anyway if it is approved. Most it will have a positive impact to that entire area, and it's keeping in the regional use of the site. Concerns have been expressed as detailed by the Deputy Presiding Member, and there has been submission. And there's nothing been so serious that it cannot be addressed by the proposed conditions. So I support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. I pretty much concur with everything that was said by Lindsay, except I don't agree with her comments on the appearance of the building, because I can understand that the Heritage Council, I mean, in fact, I can understand that new buildings, you have to avoid the look of being fake heritage or faux heritage. And, you know, that really enhances the integrity of the existing heritage buildings. But, I mean, obviously the main issue here is traffic. And there's a lot of contradictions in what I've heard in the debate and what I've heard from the planners, who I didn't really think really address the traffic issues all that well. The thing is, 16,000 drivers, they're commuters mostly. Well, we know they are. They're commuters, 16,000. I mean, very few of those are actual real locals. Just passing through Guildford. At one end, we've got the whole is constrained by a single-story bridge. I mean, obviously, main roads aren't going to comment. It's not a main road, right? As long as, you know, everything's going to end up down at the main road just as it should, that's fine. It doesn't worry them whether the traffic is banked up beyond Barker's Bridge up to the Swan Valley. The thing is that it's only going to have minor impact. Yeah, but I mean, surely the proponents are intending for people to stop there and use the shopping centre or the shopping facilities, the extended shopping away from. So minor impact, but we want as many people as possible to stop and buy. No, it's either it's going to have a lot of impact because people are going to stop and they're going to buy at this new facility, or you know, they're not going to stop and buy. So why build it? Now, you know, there's like a real contradiction there, and you know, it doesn't. I mean, you've been there. If you've been there, you've seen that this is a really contested spot. And I mean, you know, if you can't get in one way, you'll just go around the roundabout again and try again. And I mean, the last thing that site needs is people going around and around the roundabout just to be able to access the IGA. So, you know, I can see why the proponent is taking the risk of building there, because, you know, obviously people won't they'll be extremely tempted to, you know, on their commute, pop in there and get themselves you know, some food for making the meal that night. But this is just going to increase the congestion because these are not locals. These are people passing through. And maybe they should just wait to go up a little bit further up to Drumpelia and pop into the shopping centre that's going to be built there, or pop into the shopping centre of Caversham and actually do a proper shop. So that's that. I mean, the other thing about there's no other location, or it's an appropriate, you know, it's not really actually. There's actually 4 locals. I'm talking about 4 locals for their shopping. There's a little shopping centre on Drame Street that's really, actually, I think, quite underutilised. That is the appropriate place for this IGA to be located if it's going to cater to locals. So, you know, here we go, another contradiction. Is it catering to locals or isn't it? You know, don't say it's catering to locals if you're actually going to cater to commuters. You know, that means that locals then have to wear all the chaos of the traffic congestion if it's for commuters. So if it's locals, then let's look for the appropriate place for locals to shop. And, you know, I agree, it's better for locals to shop, you know, close to where they live. But the appropriate place for that is that small shopping centre that already exists on James Street that I believe is underutilised. Not to mention the fact that there's plenty of other shops and you know, possible sites along James Street itself, along that sort of heritage precinct there. Look, this is going. I mean, you know, you might travel through there every day, but I think this will slow down your journey. So, this is not the western suburbs. It's not a country town. Guildford is, it's basically seriously impacted by commuter traffic. There's no way around it. There's no way that you can stop that because of the way that the infrastructure has been built. We've got thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people up now between Ellenbrook and Guildford. I mean, it is what it is, and we don't need to be making the problem worse by having developments on corner sites where the traffic is already pretty much at a standstill at certain times of the day. And these are commuters. These are people that want to get through in a hurry. It's just going to be pandemonium. So I can't support it.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Henderson.
Briefly, thank you. First things first. Yes, there are a lot of commuters going through Guildford. It happens to be a choke point. There happens to be a river in the way. And the reality is that there is a fair bit of traffic there. I use that area quite a bit too, and sometimes things are a bit slow. Certainly peak hours, absolutely. The fact of the matter is that most commuters from the north will drop into Coles in Caversham or the like to get whatever they need, because there's a bottle shop there as well, but there's also a chemist and other shops. So I think if you can't get a parking bay in this new IGA location, guess what? People are just going to move on. They're not going to stop. So I don't think that argument is a consideration, because people will vote with their feet, effectively, go where things are convenient. The traffic impact as a percentage is tiny, but more importantly, has been raised, the local community do want a store. There's one proposed here, and that's what we're dealing with. And in that regard, whilst I don't like the look of that brown brick, and we're looking for differentiation, I'm pleased that the city will be able to deal with that when that stage comes. So lots of other things have been raised, but I'm not going to go over them other than say I'm quite happy with what's being proposed. It's been long overdue. People have been seeking it for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Yes, look, I too support the proposal, but firstly I want to thank the officers for a very comprehensive report, well written and well reasoned report. The shop, as been said, is a P or permitted use, and that's not in question. What is in question, obviously, is how the shop operates at that location in terms of parking, transport, and its impact on heritage. In my assessment, I've had regard to the scheme, to the policies, and both state and local. I'm very cognizant of the submissions made by the local community members, and particularly that of the Guildford Association. But the officer report is accompanied by numerous technical reports prepared by experts in their field. And this is what I have to have due regard to, is those expert technical reports. In relation to the traffic, I'm swayed by the advice that the additional traffic generated by this development will not unduly exacerbate the existing situation. I'm also satisfied that the parking is sufficient for a shop of that size or this nature. I note the surveys that were done in relation to other shops, but perhaps another one that I do visit occasionally is the IGA at Maidavale, which is a very small IGA, or a small IGA about the size of this one, within a residential area. And when I visit, there are usually around 15 to 20 cars at most in the car park. From a design point of view, I note the DRP comments and that of the Heritage Council are very supportive of this proposal. In relation to the materiality of the proposed new building, I note the comment made of Mr. Griffiths, who is a highly regarded expert in this field of heritage architecture. And the report states the proposed market building is to be constructed in brick masonry to match the materiality and textural appearance of the retained double-storey warehouse. The colour of the new bricks, or the colour of the bricks used, varies slightly to that of the double-storey warehouse to provide a suitable contrast to enable identification as a modern construction. And I know there's been a lot of discussion around the colour of these, but I'm satisfied that the colour that's being proposed is not extreme in terms of some of the comments made by members in the gallery, but it is of a suitable colour and will work in that situation. I acknowledge that many members of the community disagree with that, but I'm prepared to accept the colour of the brick and the architectural design that's before us today. So I do support the proposal as presented. Thank you. Back to the the mover to wind up the debate.
I don't think I'll add anything further. We've discussed it. Thank you.
All right, I'll put the proposal to approve with conditions. All in favour? Against? That's carried 4-1. Thank you very much. Just to finish off the meeting, there's in this section there's no forms of applications, no SAT reconsiderations, but in other business there is one SAT matter there, and I close the meeting at 11:34. Thank you for your attendance and good trip, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. Cheers.
Okay, bye.